Welcome back to the weekly web chats. I'm excited to share some more video resources with you today with two video gurus, Nikki and Chris. Thanks for being here, ladies. I know you're busy.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Will you each just introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit your history, who you are, where you are.
All right. Yeah, my name is Nikki and I'm in Montana. I was a classroom teacher for 16 years and I taught mostly in the elementary space, K-1 for the biggest part of my chunk there. And I currently now am a technology coach working for Montana PBS and doing some of the same work that Darcy's doing in North Dakota, working with rural teachers in Montana to integrate technology in their classrooms.
I am currently a kindergarten teacher working on year 23, I think, 22, 23. Kind of lost track a little bit. And all but one of those years has been in kindergarten. And I have just the past several years upped my video use and technology use in the kindergarten classroom. My students have one-to-one iPads. So it makes it very conducive to having them really share their work and be a part of everything that we do in the classroom, as far as whether it's a video or just the different web tools that I use, the different apps that I use. And I've done some PD on that just in my district and then around Minnesota a little bit. So presented in Las Vegas once too. That's kind of fun.
Hey,
so,
that's awesome. Well, our goal today is to really dive in. We've been talking about digital reflections. So in the past couple of chats, I've been sharing different ideas and different tools that would help students reflect digitally. But today I really want to focus on video. And so there is this resource packet. It's in the video description. So there's a link to this resource packet. You can access everything. And I use the word sophisticated, but there are certainly some pretty simple things that we're still going to be talking about today. So my first question for the two of you, because I've seen some of the video work that you've gotten out of kids, but can you talk about what interested you in trying to use video in the classroom in the first place?
Well, for me, I could just see the power of getting a better assessment, especially with little kids, just getting to see more of what they could do. And because they're emergent writers, they're emergent readers, pencil paper didn't always give me a big picture of what they could do, but letting them talk to a camera, and the younger they are, the less inhibited they are by that camera. But letting them talk to the camera and just explain their thinking or show what they know really gave me that nice, well-rounded look of what a kid could do. And then plus the engagement factor, there is just something about creating video as a media that it excites kids and gets them interested. And especially in this world of YouTube, everybody wants to be a YouTuber. So it was kind of a no-brainer. Even when I was a kid, I remember when make a video was a big deal. So it's just it's a better product, in my opinion.
I think I really got my start doing more video type stuff when I started really utilizing Seesaw in my classroom, because my use of video and that kind of tech in the classroom has grown along with all the options with that particular program and their spin-offs and different apps that they have that are very useful and user-friendly with the Seesaw app. So I kind of take that fly on the wall approach to my day. And even today when we were at a Lyceum down in the gym, I took a quick video of the cool things going on in the kids, and I was able to instantly send that video to families through Seesaw. So within 5 minutes, they knew exactly what their child was doing, and they saw their child doing it. So a lot of the live I like, but then I also do all my communication with families through Seesaw. So some of it's video, some of it's uploads and different things like that. So it was really Seesaw that was a huge push for me to have the kids more involved in how they're learning and sharing that with their families.
Yeah.
Why don't we just transition to talking a little bit about Seesaw then, since that's come up. Nikki, you used another tool similar to Seesaw.
Well, I did. I started out blogging with my class, and so we used a tool called Kid Blog to do text things, but then we would just use the video on the iPad to create some video and import it to Kid Blog. And then we used another tool that was a little bit easier called Easy Blog, but they're not around anymore. They had to close doors on their shop last year. It was very sad. I think they just couldn't compete with Seesaw because it was such a great platform and just all free and just didn't have any limitations.
And plus you can blog right along with Seesaw as well. You can
blog, it's a portfolio, it's a parent communication tool, you know, it's really the whole package, and it's completely free.
Yeah. And that was, Chris helped do a little session on Seesaw, and I never used Seesaw, but my siblings as parents, their students, I've talked to my siblings as parents who are parents of Seesaw users in classrooms, and they've shared that they really like how simple it is. It looks like Facebook to some extent. It has different posts, and you invite who can be in a Seesaw class. So you invite who you want in the classroom. Chris was nice enough to let me in her classroom, so I will get to that, and we can just look at what it looks like. There's this nice just little news feed basically where you have updates of what's going on in the classroom. So parents can see little videos, parents can see what's going on in the classroom. And we did talk about Seesaw a little bit when we were talking about parent communication. Chris, can you talk a little bit about how you use Seesaw in order to help students do video projects?
Well, we just actually this week had Apple Week. So one thing that we did is we talked about we read the book The Apple Pie Tree, for example, and talked about the different seasons of the tree. So we looked at fall trees, winter trees, spring trees, summer trees, and then I had them, okay, there it is. I had them choose their favorite, and then I use the DoWink app, which is a green screen app. I happen to have a green corner, I call it, in my classroom because I literally have a green corner painted in my room. And had the kids stand there and then showed them, look at that, how'd you get a spring tree behind you? And they're just, because that was our first live green screen activity. But and then I took those pictures. We have a display in the hallway, but then did a little writing about it. And then I utilized Shadow Puppet, which is a Seesaw app, or works well with Seesaw, and just made a little video, added some music to it, and just basically an overview of all the stuff that we did this week, including our green screen activity. So that's an example of one thing we did.
That's cool. And I have links to those tools in the slide deck as well under these other resources if you want to learn more about DoWink, which is the green screen app. And this is the Shadow Puppet that made the little slide. I did turn off the sound just because we were doing this. So I did turn the sound off for that slide deck. Can you talk, as you go through the year, and I think it's important anytime you're introducing tech, I certainly didn't start with big things. I didn't start the year with a video project for students.
No.
Can either of you talk about, let's go, like Nikki, can you share a little bit, like how did you get kids, we can keep coming back to Seesaw as a tool, how did you get kids used to or help build the tools so that they could do this?
Yeah, and that was what you had to start with, you know, carving out that time just to teach them how to use the tools and being really patient. And so I did a lot with an app called Explain Everything. I I think it was on that page right there. And that was a screencasting whiteboard tool. And so a lot of our video projects were created in Explain Everything. And this was when we were blogging, those videos then would be integrated into our class blog, but Explain Everything allowed kids to take a picture of something and then talk over it or annotate over it. Those functions are all in Seesaw now. So you could use Explain Everything or you could use Seesaw, but there would be no need to use both. But at the time I used that, and it would be a simple, okay, you finished your writing for today, and now I want you to go take a picture of it and just read the writing. And then we'll have, for me, that was a lovely, they'd know right away if they got ready to record and they couldn't read what they had written. Like immediately they'd head back and start revising that writing with me not even having to tell them anything. So those were things where we just started with reading one sentence and recording ourselves talking over one piece of work, and they were teeny tiny little videos that took a lot of patience. I remember telling it, like sending a message to a friend once saying, I think I said touch the plus sign about 55 times today. It was like, when are they going to learn to touch the plus sign? And she was like, they'll learn, they'll get it. Like they'll be the best plus sign touchers you ever saw. Like just have patience. And sure enough, by, I don't know, mid-October, they were very good at touching the plus sign. But you really did have to have that understanding. It just takes a long time. And sometimes I'd have to have extra hands in the room helping. I was lucky to have middle school students who wanted to come in every now and then and help out, or parent volunteers or classroom aides that could sit with a kid and walk them through all of those steps. But yeah, we didn't do any of the really big, awesome multi-scene productions until spring, probably, depending on the year.
And that, I like that, a couple of those tips of it is going to take some time. So build slowly. Like my seniors did a senior capstone in May where they did a full on 3 to 5 minute video production. But that wasn't the first video thing that we did in the course of the year. And in terms of also building that skill, think of the tools. You two as kindergarteners were really laying the kindergarten teachers, rather. You're not kindergarteners.
Not anymore.
I feel like it sometimes.
You were really laying the foundation. So now anyone else who is interested in videos, and I do think that that's important. If there's a technology tool that other people in your building are already using and the kids are already familiar with and parents are already familiar with, consider using that tool. Even if you have a personal preference, because I think it just is easier. So for us, we used WeVideo to do our senior capstones. So when the sophomore team at our high school started doing a video project, they started also using WeVideo, so that the students in general, yeah, we got some new students by senior year, and there's always some mixing and mashing. But in general, now the kids have done a couple video projects. So even by the time they get to me senior year, they've used this WeVideo tool a couple times. And then we use other similar tools in smaller ways throughout the year before I just say, make a movie.
Right.
And I also like that tip of, if you can have additional support when they're using a tool, bring that in.
I like to also use my own students as little mentors, because some of them have a ton of iPad or tablet experience. And you can kind of tell who's going to be a little more savvy and pick those things up first, and who they need to partner up with. So when I'm teaching the basics of holding the iPad, turning on the iPad, I mean, we got to start at the very beginning with the basics. There's those that already have that. So it's really nice to, even at 5 and 6, they can be a helper to someone else who doesn't have that background.
Yeah. I appreciate that you are making it that fundamental of like, this is the mechanics of this thing. But you're right, some kids will come in with that as well. You both have shared that you got to the point where you were one-to-one in your classroom. Can you talk about doing a project like this, or any using technology in general, but if you wanted to make a video project, if I didn't have a device for every kid, do you have some strategies? Like, how do you help kids still use technology and be creative in this way if you don't have an iPad or a computer for every single kiddo?
Well, one thing I do if we're doing like a class hands-on science or STEM kind of activity, I'll have my student helper be the videographer of that particular activity. So even though I do have one-to-one, I will have that particular student do the stopping and starting on the videotaping, or do the narrating or the sending or different things like that. So to find your own way to rotate through who's the videographer for different things, or like I said, partnering up. We partner up with 5th grade for different things. Well, there's another opportunity for devices. Have them work with 3 or 4 kids on one device for activity.
I like that class A. I like the class videographer, in part because now there's only one kid, you only need one device, but it also gives every single child an opportunity to have a little bit of support doing some videography before they have to do it for themselves. Right. So any tips, Nikki? How did you, because I don't think you haven't always been one-to-one.
No, we definitely gradually moved up to that. We had just one iPad in the room at first, and that's when we started blogging, using Kid Blog and doing things with Explain Everything. And so it became a center activity, and at first it was a teacher-led center that if I had 2 or 3 kids in front of me, we could quickly teach them how to use it. And then as they became more comfortable using the tool independently, then the iPad just sat at a table, and that was the center, and the task was make a video. And so we certainly didn't have the mass production of video that we did when we were one-to-one. The projects were a fewer and farther between, and it took maybe all week to get every kid on camera, but that was okay, because we had started from not doing it at all. So the fact that we were doing a little bit at a time was just fine. And then, we moved to having a cart that we shared with the school, and then having maybe a designated 30 minutes where the iPads were in our room, and we could, pass one out to everybody and do as much as we could in that period of time. And I will admit to being a bit of an iPad hog when I was at the school, and when we were sharing the cart, I'd walk by the room and kind of just peek in, and if it was sitting in there, I would just take it. I would just leave a note that was like, if you want it, come find it in my room, because I just couldn't stand them like sitting and collecting dust.
Not being yeah.
And I think that's probably why they eventually just gave me my own set.
There's a tip for teachers. You want your own tech, you need to just constantly be stealing all the tech.
Yeah.
Eventually you'll just break people's will, and you'll get your own tech.
I don't even want to hang out with you, but you'll have iPads whenever you want them.
We had shared laptop carts at the high school. So when I had technology, it would be one-to-one. But when I didn't always have a cart. There were lots of teachers sharing not that many carts. So you had to reserve carts ahead of time. So I did really have to be strategic about building projects and like having days where we could accomplish certain things. And just like what the two of you are saying, by starting smaller and having some team projects, certainly by high school, I had the advantage that a lot of kids did have cell phones. And so I could kind of cheat from time to time. And students could do some of the things that we wanted to do with taking pictures or little videos, and certainly simpler tools like Flipgrid for video reflections. There's the Flipgrid app, so they can just do that on their phone. And I could bring in, my own Kindle and have that as a station, so I could troubleshoot some things so that I could make things work, even if I didn't have tech for everybody in any one day. I know that Nikki can't stay with us forever, unfortunately. he did share this little step-by-step guide of thinking through from the beginning to the end of a bigger project. So we've talked a little bit about smaller projects, of taking a picture of your work and then talking over it and explaining it. Being a videographer of the activities of the day and what's going on. Nikki, you shared with me, no, I can't remember, one of the two of you, I'm sorry, you both share so many cool ideas, but one of the two of you talked about how when kids build things during playtime, like they make all these cool creations and then they really struggle having to take them apart.
Yeah, that was mine.
Yes.
Fridays, you got to take your Legos apart on Fridays.
Yeah.
Yes, but by having Seesaw, now you can take a picture or a video of that thing that you've created and you just don't want to just destroy, but you can capture that and save it and the kids can go back to it. So it's honoring the fact that you cannot leave this tower up forever. You can't.
Infinite space. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't have your Lego creation using up all of the Legos forever, but you can document it and save it. So those are a lot of little things, but I like this. Nikki's provided this beautiful step-by-step. If you are wanting to do a larger, bigger project with video, would you just talk us through your process of how you figured these things out and how you use them a little bit?
I'm not seeing it on the screen though. Do you have?
I'm sorry. It's
my simple show showing up, but I don't see.
Then let me redo this. I will redo my share. Thanks for that note. Can you see it now? I'll go to just sharing my desktop and we'll get it going.
Okay, yep, now I see it. Okay, so yeah, this is a Google drawing that has hyperlinks. And so each hyperlink takes us to a Google Doc, which is a resource page. And so I identified, and really when I started working at PBS, and just sort of watching these documentarians walking by me by my desk and listening to the planning of screenings and writing scripts and them pestering filmmakers for not being finished with their documentaries when they'd already scheduled screenings and things like that. I started to really think about, well, what is the process? What goes into creating a film, and how could we use that for kids? And what I learned is that it's not linear. And you don't do one thing and then another and then another. You might start at any one of these steps and then go out to the others. So some people might start with storyboarding, which is drawing a picture for each scene of a story and just having that story be told. But what I find is a lot of our documentary makers don't use a storyboard because the story happens after they start filming. They go out and shoot film and then bring that together and start editing, and that's when they start seeing the story come out, and then they make a storyboard. And so that's when you honor the process with kids. And so to me, it's this beautiful thing about writing and asking kids to figure out what is the story that they want to tell, and then how do we go about telling that story. And kids honestly want to start with just going and getting their video footage. And I used to stop them, like, no, you need a plan, you need a script, you need to know what you're going to do. But what happened was, if you let them start filming, they figured out on their own, oh, this is a mess. Like, this looks bad, this sounds bad. We need to actually write out what we're supposed to do. So when you look at it as this experience that can be student-led, and you introduce all of these steps to them and explain what they are, and then I'm sharing a lot of different resources for each of those steps. And then let the kids decide where they start, and let the project guide where they start. So some kids, it might be writing a script and then coming up with costumes and then practicing and then doing that in front of video, or making puppets and doing that in front of a video camera. For other kids, they're just going to go out and start filming and then come back and write a script and do some filming again. And so this is just And then I always want to say that the screening part, obviously you can't start with that one. Like that one has to be probably like the last thing you do. Although our filmmakers will say that even after the screening, they want to go back and edit, change things, that they never feel really done with a project. But I think screening is really important because the point of creating a video is so someone sees it. The point of putting something on film is so that you show it to an audience. And so if you explain what screening is and say, we're going to make a big deal out of this, we're going to invite parents in, or we're going to share it via Seesaw with your parents, or we're going to invite another class in to watch, you talk to them about who is the audience, who's going to be watching this. You talk through, how are we saving these? Are these going on YouTube so that they live for posterity? A lot of our projects lived like on my phone for a long time, and I had to work through finding a place for them to live. And sometimes screening could be as simple as inviting the middle school kids over to watch them, or inviting some parents in, or grabbing the principal and having her come in and watch. But it was really important that we did that so that the kids got that reward for all of the work at the end.
Well, and it's also creating, we talk a lot about that in writing, of creating that authentic audience of
Yes.
students. If they're just producing things for us as their teacher for it to be graded,
Mm-hmm.
that's not really creating an authentic learning experience where they're really producing something that is for other people, that's for consumption by people. And I can't think of, I mean, with writing and video, with projects like this, it just is screaming for an authentic audience, for the knowledge that there's people are going to see this.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be embarrassed at the end of this. So I need to take this seriously, because it's not just going to be Backyard seeing this. It's going to be the entire senior class potentially seeing this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in a class of 300 kids, or 280, however many it is at West Fargo, that certainly made people up their game.
Yeah, it raises the level a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you want to, what is your experience with that process of filmmaking with your kids, or just even like empowering them to make video, like however big, small videos for you, Chris, in your kindergarten classroom?
Well, the first project I did, I really liked the screening and who's your audience. We did, last year I did a flipped back to school, was my first video project that I did with the kiddos as well. And they did an introductory paper about what their name was, who they lived with, and then something they did over the summer. And they were able to pick a background through the green screen app. And then we videotaped. This is actually, I did this while introducing them to how to use the iPad. This was our very first thing, and it's where we are right now in school this year, just getting started with the iPads. And then we put it together in iMovie, made a movie out of it with music and different things like that, of all of them talking and recording themselves, saying who they are, what they did this summer. And then we screened it actually for all the kindergarten cohorts in the other 3 classrooms. So that was really fun, but it was really long. It ended up a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. So I have to figure that out a little bit this year.
But that's good. That process is going to change as we go through different things. And that's just going to be part of the process. I'm scrolling through a whole bunch of different things, because I'm hoping that Nikki has time to share at least another example with us. I think all of that is, so both of you have also demonstrated that part of this video process can really also be student ownership of their learning, but it's also about building your classroom community. As students are producing authentic learning experiences as they're going through that process. Chris, your example of screening of kind of the story of introductions of who they are, what a great opportunity for the kids to learn about each other. And there are so many different ways that you can take that. They could certainly, I love the idea of the kids making films about each other
Mhm.
There's this beautiful, I talked to a couple teachers this last weekend in Sydney, Montana, and they were talking about doing this hero, and like, why are they a hero? It was part of one of their class activities. And I just asked that question, like, what if another kid had to tell the heroic story of one of their classmates?
Sure.
How might that shift the story? And what might that peer see that the individual student might not see? And that power of telling those stories and the power that that can build in bringing a classroom community.
Mm-hmm.
Nikki, I don't know how, like, will you talk about this stop motion thing quickly before you, and
Yeah,
just a little bit about that and how it works?
Yeah, so one of the things I did with 4th and 5th graders was have a makerspace time where they kind of had some free choice. And one of the things I had some boys do is choose to create stop motion videos using Legos. And so they built Lego things and, you know, took pictures of them in different settings and then put them together using this app called Stop Motion Studio. But then last year I got to go into a high school classroom and they were using Stop Motion Studio to do something a little different. The assignment was, and this is a high school science class, and they were supposed to make a stop motion claymation video illustrating the difference between fusion and fission. And so the kids had used Play-Doh and they were using their own smartphones to take pictures and set up the different scenes with their Play-Doh and then talk over these videos. It was incredible. They were working in teams, so you had your collaboration. They're working in teams of 3 or 4. They had these elaborate tripod things that they had contracted where they were like masking taping their phones to chairs and things like that so they could get a steady shot. One girl had gone home and like created a cardboard box tripod thing that she could sit the phone on upside down and then put stuff under the box so that they could get a better shot. And it was,
they're creating prototypes and problem solving.
Right.
You know, better like, videos, figuring it out.
Yeah, never mind fusion and fission. Like, look at the engineering that we're doing in here. I don't know. I can share my screen, I think, or do you have to stop sharing yours?
You have to stop here first.
Okay.
And I also like, this is another great example of, even if not all students have cell phones, each group of kids, if they are working in a group of 3 or 4, each group only needs 1 phone. Mm-hmm. And so even if you have a class where you know not every student has a phone, it's okay. And I think you could do a little pre-planning and just find out who is willing to allow their phone to be used to take pictures for a class project, and kind of identify those volunteers first, and then form groups around those 5 phones. That's not the best way to make a group, but if you know you have tech limitations, it's one possible solution for bringing tech into your classroom if you don't have access to a lot of technology. So that's another reason why I think this stop motion project is pretty cool.
All right, so I'm working on finding my screen now. Right here. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
So here you can see their tripods there that they've got their phones stuck to the top of chairs. There's a little cardboard contraption, and scotch taped to the basket over top of a whiteboard with the clay. And you're right, they were probably grouped around common phones and things like that. I think this one was the one that makes everybody laugh. So I'll turn that one on.
Fission. A film brought to you by Fuego Choose Production. We have a neutron here, right here, from space. Okay, sure. So it's coming in, it's flying real hot, just as a lone neutron. Bada boom, bada bing. Look at that. What is this down here? Oh, it's uranium. Uranium-235, perfectly stable, unlike my exes. Here comes the space neutron. Bada boom. Whoa, what is this? It's uranium. Wait, but it's 236. That's not stable. Oh, one too many bean burritos. That's how I'm feeling too, man. There it goes. Wait, but hold on. Krypton 91. What? Barium 142. 3 neutrons. Okay, it explodes. Everything goes everywhere. Wait, but here's another neutron. Space neutron? Okay, sure. Here we go. wait, what was that? Uranium-235 is a cycle. Fine.
That's cute.
So yeah, I mean that's it. These are I think sophomores, and it was a cool. I had nothing to do with this project. I simply just got to watch it happen. But it was a really cool use of everybody just downloaded the free app, and she gave them a time limit. She said we start them on Monday, we're done by Thursday. Like
we're not dragging this out.
Yeah, you've either got it or you're done. And she said these were the best ones. She said there were certainly some that flopped and didn't demonstrate an understanding of anything. But that's the case with any assignment we give students.
Right. Well, and that's also the goal of any assignment to some extent, not that students flop, but so that we understand what the kids know. And so certainly that teacher, if through that process of creating the video, if she learns that these kids don't understand the concepts, well, now we know what we need to reteach because of the beauty of summative and formative assessments and our summative assessments. We know what we need to redo in order to have this be successful. So I liked that. Thanks for sharing that video just so people could see what that was like. Yeah. And I liked that it's app-based, which is inconvenient if what you mainly have for tools is laptops. Then an app-based program isn't the best. But again, for a high school setting, if you know that at least half your kids have phones and it's a free app and they can download it and put it, or if you can line up just a handful of iPads or other devices that kids can use. I've had pretty good luck asking kids to bring in a device if they're willing, that I will lock it in my classroom so they don't need to have it in their locker. And just, again, asking for volunteers of who's willing to have something in the classroom. But I think that stop motion thing works really well. I like how that science teacher used it to explain that process. And that it was a very visual way to show this is how these electrons and this is how these this is how everything interacts with each other. And this is kind of the mess that it makes on an atomic level. Any other favorite tools? Are there things that you just really love using in your classroom?
Are you talking to me?
You. Sorry.
I thought we were still on Nikki.
Yeah.
Oh yes. See, again, bad teacher. I'm just like not in the calling on people. I'm just so used to no hands up. Just anyone can answer. I have not used, like I said, I have not used Seesaw. I did pull, if people are interested in Seesaw, I pulled a whole bunch of examples of things. This is from a slide deck that Chris put together last year. And I did think that these were particularly helpful of just showing you the types of projects. And again, this is journals. This can be a kid taking a picture and recording something. It can also be its own short video project. So Seesaw allows you to do a lot of different types of digital reflection all in one space.
Yeah. And there is a paid version of it, which is like one step further, called the skills, which you can track progress too. And the one thing that I learned over the summer about the skills with the paid app, and I'm not trying to sell it, but that if you record their journal writing, like I do an activity, and they have Seesaw activities, so the students journal, or they keep track of their writing every week or every other week. They take a picture, do the recording and the reading and stuff of their journal writing or their curriculum writing. And with the paid, that journal would follow them. Like it's always in the database. So I kind of was trying to point that out to my.
And it would follow year to year. In addition,
instead of the big binder that we pass with the once a month assessment of their writing, it would just be out there in the virtual world. So
What a cool story. Like when a kid finishes 6th grade or whatever year your school is done, they would have this whole archive of their writing process.
All
Not
digital. The parents can download and have forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
as a parent, I believe, so again, like I'm confusing stories. I believe, Nikki, though, you told me a story about watching your daughter in different videos throughout the course of the year. Can you just talk about the power of videos in showing that growth of a kid?
Yeah, it was fun to watch. I was lucky enough to have my daughter as a kindergartner. And so I think when you spend all day with your kid, you don't really even see the growth because you're just together so much. And so going through some of the posts that she had put, looking at where she was in the fall, well, when she started kindergarten, she couldn't say her R's. And so this was her picture of the garbage and this, I made a circle and things like that. And then by the end of the year, this is a pollinator garden, those R's were there. And it was just, it was lovely to see the growth in just that little thing of her speech. And I love that I have this video of her when she couldn't say her R's. and talking about what she had learned.
And again, that's one of the nice things about any of these video resources. You can now share that with parents and they can see that. And what you just said about the speaking also reminded me, CISA has a whole bunch of how-to videos, but I do think it's a really cool idea for kids who are learning to read and are working on fluency in their reading. They can use these videos to record themselves reading. And I like Nikki's point about their writing process, reading their own writing and going, oh, this isn't good. I need to edit here. But I think there's a lot of power in what these videos can show us, not just about their learning right now, but their learning over time in a way that we can't always capture just with documents.
Right.
I do want to mention, since it's in here, I do just want to mention WeVideo at least. This is what I used with my senior narrative projects. And I did put a link here to the senior capstone project. They had to tell the story of themselves. And we learned, as with everything, one of the main things I'm hearing from both of you, and certainly is my experience, every time I do a project, it gets better. And so like Chris learned that the showing was a little too long and like she's gonna tweak that for next year. And it keeps getting better. I lucked out that the seniors were doing this capstone project prior to me joining the West Fargo High School team. And so they had worked out some of the kinks before I even joined the team, or we were able to work that out. But one of the kinks was, it was kind of turning into just a slideshow of the kids, like, here's me as a baby, here's me in T-ball, here's me, and which was nice. And parents loved it because it was ready for high school graduation, and then they could just play that slide deck that their kid had created. But we really broke down of, yes, that was them using the tool, but that was not them really meeting standards in terms of something that we would expect a senior in high school to be able to do. So we really focused it on, you need to tell a narrative story. And we even focused it further. You need to tell us the story about a significant revelation, a significant learning that you have experienced. And it could be a learning connected to school. Some of the teachers really wanted it to be something you have learned in school. And I fought against that. I thought it should just be something they had learned, and it could be a life lesson that they had learned. Certainly it could be something in school specifically. And then they had to tell the narrative story of that journey as a learner, of how did they start, what was the exciting incident, what was the conflict that was causing problem. They know the elements of story, but it was lovely to watch them struggle with how to tell their own story without it just being a sequence of events, of just saying, well, first I was born and then I went. And so instead of just this linear list of things that had happened, they really had to think about their story as from a narrative structure. And certainly you could do that with historical figures. I think you could tell the story of a science concept or a math concept, tell the story of how this unfolded, as well as telling the story of just your learning in doing that process. So we used WeVideo for that. I did, if we look back, I was reading these little tips in this 4 tools for documenting and reflecting with media. And one of the main tips was let students choose which tools they use when they're expressing themselves and communicating their message. Sometimes we can't do this because there's a tool that we have, you know, and if you're using Seesaw and that's the main platform, well now, like, that's pretty easy and kids can do that. By the time they were doing these larger projects with me, I said, WeVideo is the thing that I know how to use. So if you need help, this is the only tool that I can help you with.
Yeah.
But if you already know iMovie, just use iMovie. If you want to use a stop motion thing, use a stop motion thing. You can use whatever you want as long as you can meet these learning standards. Because ultimately the assessment, to me, needs to be about the learning and not the tech tool. So we need to make sure that we're not assessing their ability to use WeVideo. We're assessing their ability to tell the story of their life or whatever the assessment happens to be. What are your final thoughts? Nikki, what's your final thought, your encouragement? Why should people use video, or, you know, how do they do this? Just your final.
I think it's really easy to look at any of these projects and be very intimidated and or to feel like, or to do them and feel like they weren't very good. You know, I had a teacher once that I asked if I could use her stuff to show in a conference, and she's like, oh no, they just weren't that good. I would never want you to share what we created.
Oh no.
Turn out well at all. And it was the first attempt her students had at creating with video, and she had taken on a fairly large project to start with. And so I think that it's all iterative. You know, what you learn in the first one, you take to the next one. And yeah, it's going to take more time. You're going to end up spending 3 times the amount of time that you expected. But you really, I think video gives you the opportunity to go a lot deeper into the content and into the understanding. You can really see mastery in video. If you want to talk about proving mastery of the content, you have no better evidence than a kid on the screen talking and sharing and demonstrating what they know and what they've learned. So it's worth the time. It's worth the risk of it not being very good. And we can always delete it. If they're that bad, we can just delete them.
Thank goodness for delete.
Yeah.
Even in the worst product, again, like even if the videos themselves are gross and not very well done, it still is showing us that learning process. And that doesn't mean that the learning was bad, but I agree with you. It's very easy to like look at the final, like the actual video and just go,
yeah, no one wants to watch that, you know, but that's not, we're not giving out Oscars for these things here, you know.
Thank God.
It's okay.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good just general tip for teachers too. Anytime we try something, I for a long time think I didn't use as much tech in the classroom because I just was afraid that it wasn't going to work. And it was much more comfortable for me as the teacher to continue doing what I've been doing and that I already understood and I knew, and I could keep perfecting that. But one of the biggest things that I learned, I think around year 8, so it took me a long time, was, even when I really screw up, the kids don't know.
No.
They have no idea what your vision was or what you were hoping it would look like. Yeah.
Right. And so they have created these projects that they think are the bee's knees, and they are so excited about sharing. And I'm sitting there going, this is not what I expected. And I'm looking at my rubric and I'm thinking about how can I do this better for next time, which is good. As teacher, it's good to be yearning for better. But we need to, I think, I need to work on letting go of perfection and recognizing that even when something doesn't go as well as I had hoped, it was still good for those kids.
Right.
How about you, Chris? What is your kind of advice for people using video? Why should they, or how should they? How can they gear up for this?
I think the why is because you're going to find some aspect of utilizing the video in your classroom that is going to, I don't know, revitalize you or reinvent something. For me, it was reinventing the newsletter. I hated Fridays because that's the day I always got my newsletter out. So I am running down and printing stuff and shoving it in their backpacks, the paper copy, before they left. And then I thought, oh, well, I email it to them too. But I actually last year ditched all paper communication and I do digital newsletters. So it's pictures and video and just all it's all iMovie, or sometimes I'll use Shadow Puppet, but usually I use iMovie to put it together. And so the newsletter, I have the little title thing, so there's some wording in there, and then I can record myself reading it for those that need that. But it's the kids telling the story of what we did that week and what's coming up the next week. It's the kids holding up the book saying, we read One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish today. I really liked that book. So I think the digital newsletter is what really been my big wow the past 2 years. And I actually have cut my time in half as far as making the videos. Last year, I really was very perfectionistic about it. This year I still am, but I've already got 2 out and it's only like day 18 of kindergarten. So,
well, and I like so many of the things that you just said. I like that it's the kids now really telling the story of what's going on. And as the year progresses, right, that responsibility of producing that newsletter, or at least the content, you would still have to put the things, but now whole chunks of that newsletter could be the kids' responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
The videographer. So, you know, who's doing the videographer for the theme for that week? Different kids could be responsible. And now your main responsibility is putting the piece
together and send it out.
Right, and sending it out. And I also love that you said that it has helped you in your like you said, your 23rd maybe year as you're thinking about it, that it's made you more excited about what you're teaching, that it's reinvigorated you as a teacher. And I don't think we can underestimate the impact that our energy and enthusiasm as teachers has on our kiddos.
Right. Yeah. And they feed off of that as far as just the way you're presenting things. But then today I showed them the shadow puppet of the Apple Week, and they're like, that's me. Can we watch that again? I'm like, you know that is on Seesaw and you can watch that on your mom's phone tonight. So.
And then what a great opportunity. I have to think that parents really appreciate this shift, because now too, yeah, the kid can watch the video at home, but how powerful for the kid to watch that video with their parent, with their guardian, and be able to talk about their learning and what they did. I've heard from the parents of 5th grade boys. I've heard stories that people have
I have one of those, a 5th grade boy.
People have said with Seesaw, it has changed conversations at home. Having these video logs of what's happening in the classroom have changed conversations at home, because no longer does the parent say, so what did you do in school today?
Nothing.
Blank. Yeah. Like,
nothing.
Now the parent just says, tell me about this Apple video that I watched today. And now they have this concrete thing that they can ask a question about. So whatever that little piece is, I think there's also a lot of power in that video making even deeper connections. I mean, Nikki, you talked about that, of just the video gives us the power to go deeper with our content. There's also this lovely thing that I think happens, that it can also take that learning deeper at home, but also in their conversations with their peers.
Much more fun to look at than a worksheet.
A lot more fun, and a lot more
crumpled and wet.
By the time it gets home.
If it gets home.
Yeah, if it gets home. And so now, yeah, we can also control that delivery system a bit better. Thank you both for sharing your energy, your enthusiasm, and your insights about how you're using video. Hopefully people, I can't imagine not getting an idea or two from what you've shared. Thanks too for sharing all your resources and making it so that teachers can access those so they can get a leg up. You've done a lot of legwork already and have reiterated and redesigned things. And now it's a step easier for folks to do that. If you do have any questions, if you're watching this, I feel pretty confident that either of these ladies would answer any questions if you did email them. So I'm happy to put you in contact with them if you do have questions about how they have executed any of these things in their classroom. So thanks for joining us from a couple different time zones.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.